Hi, I'm Gordy Northern Rifle Accurizing. Here at Northern Rifle, we build a lot of long-range rifles, either for hunting or for competition use. And accuracy is the most important thing with our rifles that we build. But the rifles aren't as accurate as they could be without proper ammunition, and that's why it's so important to reload for your rifles. We can build everything into the rifle for accuracy, but if you don't do your part with knowing how to shoot and doing your part with reloading, then the rifle isn't going to do you much good. Most of the time, a lot of the rifles we build are either long-range hunting rifles or long-range competition rifles. So if you're trying to shoot an elk at 600 yards or shoot all X's at 1,000 yards, accuracy is the whole thing. And your ammo is one of the most important things. And to reload, a lot of people are leery of reloading. They figure they don't know anything about it, and a lot of people are scared to ask questions. So it's not really hard to do. It's a few standard type simple steps to do. You've got a piece of brass. You full length size it so it's back to the original size. Then you got to put a new primer in, you got to measure out some powder for it, and you've got to seat the bullet. There's easy ways to do it. What we found that works the best is to work right with the customer so that he knows exactly what he's doing, and we'll have him bring in some of his brass that he's fired out of his rifle, and we will set up the loading equipment and adjust the dies up and work right with him so that he'll know exactly how to do this stuff when he gets home. Everything is set up for him, so he takes it home, puts it on the bench, and starts loading, and he'll know how to do it because he's already done it here. But of course, a lot of people maybe aren't close enough to do this, so we can help people out over the phone too, if they got any questions about it. And with this video, we're kind of hoping that it'll help explain things to people and make it a little bit easier for them. Basically, there's your most common type of reloading press is a single stage press like this for rifle loading. For rifle loading, there's just two dies, a sizing die and a bullet seating die. This particular press here, this is a Redding press. It's quite similar to most of them. It uses a shell holder here on the ram, and it runs a piece of brass up into the die. And what you do, you screw your dies into the press, and you screw them so that the sizing die goes all the way down and it hits the shell holder, and you can feel the spring over in the tool, so that way you know you've got everything possible up into the die so that you'll get it properly loaded. And myself, there's several different types of lubricant that you'll put on your brass. Most of the loading manuals will tell you need an ink pad, and you pour some oil on it, and then you take and you run your brass over that and to lube your cases. Well, what happens there, you get too much lube on your brass, you'll get it up around the shoulder, and that heavy lube will actually dimple and put wrinkles and dimples into your brass. And a lot of times too, you'll get oil inside of the brass. And anytime you get an oil, a petroleum-based product that you get in with your powder, that can have a deleterious effect on the powder, so that you're going to have inconsistent loads. So myself, I use this as a redding product. It's imperial sizing wax, and I take and put it about 3/4 of an inch up on the case, not quite half the way up. Then I dip the neck into, this is another redding product here. This is powdered graphite, and I dip the cartridge into that so that you have some graphite lube, a dry lube, on the outside and on the inside of your neck. So you take and you run that up through your sizing die, and it will run through your sizing die very easy, because you've got the lube just where the case needs it on the outside, and then with the powdered graphite on the inside and the outside of the neck. That way it goes into the die very easily, and then when it comes back, when you pull it out, the expander ball will ride through the neck, and actually your sizing ball is extruding the brass back out to the proper diameter, so that you can seat the bullets with the proper amount of tension on it. And you always want to double check, make sure that you've got everything sized and set up accordingly for your rifle. You don't want to use live ammo to run through your rifle to see if that is got it sized right. So I just use a piece of brass that's sized, and you take and run that through your rifle that you're going to be using it in. And this is, we do a lot of vintage military shooting up here. This is a 303 British rifle, and you can see it chambers up very easily, and it extracts easily also. So we know we've got our sizing down right. Another favorite of mine is the 30-06. I shoot a lot of vintage military. We shoot M1s and 03 Springfields and such as that. So especially with the M1, anytime that you're reloading for a gas gun, you got to make sure that your sizing is done correctly. Here again too, this is 30-06 brass. I put some lube around the base and dip it in the powdered graphite. And here I'm using, this is a Forster coax press. This one here is quite a unique reloading press. This has been around a long time. I started selling these things about 40 years ago. It's quite a unique design. Most of your other presses, you've got to screw your dies into the press, and then you have to adjust up your brass or your dies every time. With this particular press, once you adjust your dies up, you fasten the locking ring, and that's the only time you have to adjust up your dies, is just the first time, because your dies, instead of screwing into the top of your press, they have a slot in the press and everything is accessed from the front. You can see exactly what's going on. So you want to size something, you take your sizing die, pop it in place, and then the jaws here, rather than having a shell holder, it has a set of jaws that come in and grab the brass and support the brass while it's going up into the die. And with this system, the jaws come in and grab the brass, and it allows the brass to float and self-align itself. The dies are popped into this slot, and they will float also. So what happens is you get perfect alignment every time, and this pretty much eliminates bullet run out, so that you can full length size and seat bullets and get your most accuracy out of your reloads that you can. Another nice feature on this press is the leverage factor that's built into the press. It's the handle is designed in such a way that you can full length resize basically any brass. You get up into your big Magnum cartridges, you can full length resize just about that easy. Here again too, you want to make sure that the cartridge is going to work in the gun that you're going to use. This is 30-06. This is what I'm using in this rifle. Here again too, sizing is really critical anytime you're shooting a gas gun, whether it be an M1, M14, any of your AR rifles. Those things is very critical that you do your resizing properly, and so you can see the cartridge dropped into the chamber easily, and it extracts perfectly. So we know we've got our sizing done just right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load up 3 pieces of brass for you. This is a whole bunch of odds and ends of brass that I use for shooting an odd 6, especially in an M1. The M1 it will chew up your brass pretty good. So you kind of end up with some badly beat up brass, but this setup will do an excellent job on resizing your brass. We put a little lube on the base, dipped it into the powdered graphite, and see, I've got like I say, quite a variety of stuff here. Some of this is commercial, and some of it is some old military stuff, so I'm trying to find some of the good stuff. And so now we've got these 3 here are all sized and ready to go. The lube, you want to take that off so it doesn't get all over everything. So I have a little rag that I use with rubbing alcohol. Rubbing alcohol works good to remove your sizing lube, and with rubbing alcohol, it'll dry in just a matter of of seconds, so you don't have to worry about that hurting any of the powder. Next operation is seeding new primers. Myself, I kind of like to use this priming setup that they got on this Forester coax press. It has a very unique priming system. There's a lot of different primers out there. A lot of people will use hand primers. Everybody has got a hand primer that they offer. Most of them hand primers I've found, they won't seat a primer square. Sometimes they'll flip upside down, and myself, I've got a lot of arthritis in my hands, so I have a tough time on really seating the primer as deep as it should be. And seating the primer is very important, especially if you have a rifle like the M1. The M1 has a floating firing pin in it, and if you have a high primer, that high primer means it's sticking up above the face of the cartridge, that can cause the rifle to fire prematurely when the bolt drops on a cartridge with a high chamber. Because of the floating firing pin, it'll snap and take it off. So that's why I like this Forester setup. The brass is slid into place, and there's a priming cup here. You drop a primer in the cup, and then you slide the brass in, and you bring the handle back, and that will seat the primer perfectly square and 5/1000ths of an inch below the case face. So you know you've got the primers seated exactly the way that they're supposed to. Everything looks great. And of course, you always want to be double checking yourself. Don't assume that being you've done one or two, everything is good. You always want to be double checking yourself, make sure everything is good. Well, we've full length sized the cartridge case, and we've seated new primers. The next thing we will do will be to put in powder. Now there's a lot of different ways to measure powder. There's a lot of the companies that got a computerized powder measure. You can program the load that you want into it, and it will feed out into your electronic scale, and it will measure out just the right amount for you. Myself, I've tried them. They work pretty good, but they are a little bit slow for the way I like to load. Myself, I like to load things in steps. I'll go through and I'll size all my brass in one step, then I'll go through and put the primer in on another step, and then I'll do all the powder in another step. And the way I do the powder, I kind of like to do it this way, because I can just do every cartridge exactly the same, and it's a little bit faster. Myself, I like the Forester powder measure. It works extremely well, and it works nice and smooth, especially with some of your pencil powders. And you always want to double check, make sure that everything is set right, Take and run a couple three rounds through the powder measure. Make sure it's getting set up the way it's supposed to be, and because your measures will a lot of times work different if they a lot of times with the movement of the measure, how much it's getting shaken and moved and how hard you work the handle. This one here, I'm loading 55 grains of IMR 4350, and this particular load is about 2,600 feet a second, which is about the right speed and the right pressures to run through an M1. An M1 has got a kind of a unique action, so you don't want to run heavy loads through it. It'll actually damage your action. So this is kind of a mediocre load. It's all the power that you need. So and the reason I know how to put in 55 grains is you go to a loading manual. This particular one happens to be a nozzler, and you go to the section that you're going to be reloading, and you check with the cartridge that you're loading. This I'm loading a 30-06, and I'm loading some 168 grain Sierra Match Kings, and in here it lists IMR 4350. It says most accurate powder tested, and it tells me that 55 grains is about a middle of the road load, and so I'm going to load this with 55 grains. I double check things with the powder measure. I'm using a Hornady electronic powder measure, and I go from the measure to the scale to the electronic measure to make sure everything is correct. I don't like to use a powder measure only because it's just another mechanical device that can fail on you. So always double check your loads. Now this particular one, I noticed when I run the handle, it had a kernel in there that had kind of hung up, and it was a little bit different, and sure enough, it's 2/10 over what I want. So I just use a little measuring spoon like this, and I reach in and I grab a few little kernels out of there. It don't take much, and I get her back to the load that I want. So now I have got all the powder measured, and here's another thing. You always want to be double checking yourself. You want to make sure that you put powder in all these, because normally you'll have a tray full of 50 cartridges, and you think you've got them all, where maybe you might have missed one in the process. So what I do is use a flashlight, and I physically look in every cartridge so that I can see the powder in there. That way I know that I haven't missed one. So now we have got the powder in there. Now we need to seat the bullets. Here again too, and this is, I'm using a set of Forester dies, and the reason I'm using Forester dies is with this press, it self-aligns the brass and the die for for sizing of the brass. The next step is seating the bullet. With the Forester setup, it's got a spring-loaded sleeve that supports the cartridge and the bullet all the way up in there, so that the bullet gets seated as accurate as possible. So you take your seating die, and like I was telling you before, all you have to do is pop it in place. It's going to self-align itself, so you don't have to worry about doing any more adjusting, because you probably already adjusted it before, so it's set to go. So now we need to seat the bullets. Then when it comes to seating the bullet, it's important that you seat the bullet to the right length. There's a lot of guys that'll tell you, yeah, they'll take and blacken the bullet, and then they will stick it into the rifle, and they will close the bolt on a round, and then they'll see where the rifling made marks on it. So then that's how they will seat their bullets. And a lot of times I've asked them, well, why do you do that? Well, that's the way my dad taught me how to do it back in '62. Well, things have changed a little bit since then. So what you want to do, rather than taking advice from your brother-in-law, you better do it right, because it's seating of the bullet is very important, especially if you're, say, using a rifle with a magazine, whether you're hunting or whether you're competition shooting or whatever. Now, like any of your rifles that have a magazine in them, the overall length of the cartridge is extremely important, so that it will go into the magazine correctly and will come back out of the magazine correctly and feed into your chamber correctly. And the way to tell what length you want is to go to your loading manual again. Each loading manual will have a section in there on your particular cartridge. This is where we found out what kind of powder we were going to use. And here they're telling us with I'm shooting a 168 grain Sierra Match King, and in here it tells us to load at 3 inches, 320 thousandths long. So you adjust your die so that the bullet gets seated to that length, and of course I've already done that before to save time. So you take your bullet, put it on top of the cartridge case, and run her up through the die, and then you always want to take and double check. Even though you checked it out last time, you want to make sure that you didn't load something different. In the meantime, check your overall length, because if you're going to shoot it out of a rifle with a magazine like these, I'm going to shoot this out of an M1, and the feeding through the magazine is very important if you're shooting a rapid fire event. So this is the correct length. So we will seat the bullet in the next two. There again, two of this thing is very nice and smooth, and does a very precise job of loading. We carry a lot of different loading equipment here. We don't just have one particular brand. We have basically all the different reloading tools and dies and all the different stuff. I try to pick the best out of every line so that you get you get the best quality for what you're doing. Like I said before, accuracy is the most important thing with the rifles we build. That's our name, is Northern Rifle Accurizing. We got to build the rifle as accurately as you possibly can make it. There again, too, the rifle is not going to shoot unless the ammunition you're putting through it is top quality. So this is the best way to do any kind of shooting, whether it's hunting or competition shooting or whatever you're doing. You get the best accuracy, and of course you save yourself a lot of money in the long run. If you got any questions on reloading, don't hesitate to give us a call. We'll try to help you out as much as we can. That is about all for today. Thank you.